Hi guys! Welcome back to Once Upon Anita. If you're new here, this is where I tell you creepy stories, some true, some folklore, and some that live in between. Tonight we begin the 13 Nights of Fear. 13 stories, 13 nights, each one a little darker than the last. And for night one, we're diving into stories that share one thing. That moment when you realize you're being watched. I curated 5 TikToks, 5 encounters, so dim your lights, grab your blanket, and let's get into it. Okay, so for our first story, it takes us to the woods of Oregon. A friend's bachelorette weekend at a cabin deep in the mountains. On the drive up, the curator says she suddenly felt the need to turn back for sage and Palo Santo. She didn't quite know why, but she just did. When she finally arrived at the Airbnb, she said the air turned heavy, suffocating even. Her friends greeted her, but before she could even say hi, she blurted out, "There's something upstairs, and it's staring at you."
And I walked in, and my two friends are standing in the kitchen here and here. These are pictures of the property. And I walk in automatically just with my sensitivities. I am like, there is something up there that is funky, and I don't like it, and I don't want to go near it. I feel like I am being stared at, and it is highly dark, highly uncomfortable. And so my two friends in the kitchen are like, "Hey, Meg, how's it going? We're glad you're here." I'm like, "Yeah. How are you guys doing?" They're like, "We're great." And I'm like, "Yeah. Other than the thing that's up those stairs that's been staring at you the whole time." And they were like, "Oh my God, we were waiting for you to get here."
The way she said it so casually, if I ever walked in somewhere and felt eyes on me from the stairs, I'm gone. I'm out of there. She's better than me because I would make up any excuse to leave the house. She climbed halfway up the stairs and was hit by some kind of invisible wall. Her friends admit they stopped in the same spot earlier. Later, they noticed some kind of crawl space door in the loft, closed when they arrived, now standing wide open.
There's a little door with a crawl space, and it was shut when we got there. As people started arriving, we were having fun joking, and one of the women went up there, and we were talking about how creepy it was, and she said, "Was the door open when you guys went up there?" The crawl space door had been opened, and none of us had been up there.
Crawl spaces that open themselves, that right there, that would have been the end of the line. I would have canceled that Airbnb. I would not be there. Later on, she said about 3 a.m., electronics glitched, dead insects covered her sheets, and she felt like she was being watched. A voice told her to stay, to hold some kind of barrier. In a dream she had, the cabin apparently burned in a ring of fire that couldn't cross the line she was holding.
I was this close to getting up and leaving in the middle of the night with a 2-hour drive home, rolling in at 5 a.m. with my husband, like, "What are you doing?" But I got this very clear message: you need to stay, and you need to help hold up some kind of energetic barrier. I had a dream when I eventually the entire property was surrounded by fire, and the fire couldn't penetrate this weird line that we were all trying to hold. So I was like, fine, okay, I guess I will stay in this freaky ass house.
That I really appreciate the creator adding in pictures of the Airbnb, so I know if I ever go to Oregon, never to book that house. She then goes on to say the next morning, everyone admits they were touched, dripped on, or saw cards flinged across the deck.
Next morning, we're all hanging out on the balcony and talking, having breakfast, having coffee, and people start to share their experiences. People were touched. People staying in the upstairs bedroom in the bunk beds had water dripped onto their faces coming out of nowhere, and there were no leaks in the ceiling. It wasn't raining that weekend. Later that day, when most of the crew was playing yard games, like down here in the grass, one of the women was hanging out over here, and there was a deck of cards that literally got blown, and the cards were like flung into her face.
She then goes on to say that the thing upstairs looks spidery and not from here. Another guest saw the same thing crawling down the stairs.
Almost felt like not from here, if you catch my drift, but it was, what I saw in my mind's eye was almost like a spidery looking thing. And it's interesting because another woman who was there told me that they saw a spidery looking image of this big nasty thing like crawl from up in this main area down the stairs into the loft area where we were sleeping.
How did they not mention it to, like, their friend getting married that this place was, like, not it? They said by the next morning, the air felt like it was closing in. She told everyone it's time to go. She said she cried all the way home, which I understand. That is terrifying. So, do you think this was a haunting, or are you a bit more on the skeptical side and maybe these things could be explained away? Let me know. That cabin story was about a place. This next one is about blood, a haunting that started within the family. This creature says that when she was little in Texas, her parents tucked her baby sister into a crib and went downstairs. She played at the top of the stairs until she looked down.
It was a two-story house, and my parents were putting my little sister to sleep in her crib. Then they went on downstairs, and I continued to play with my toys at the top of the staircase. For some random reason, I decided to look at the bottom of the staircase, and I saw my sister crawling around on the ground. So I thought to myself, I wonder how she got down there. Then I remembered, my parents had just put her in the crib about 5 minutes ago. So while I stare at her, I realize that she's a little pale and she has huge black eyes, but otherwise she looks just like my sister. Naturally, I start screaming, and my parents come running.
What is up with everyone experiencing someone crawling around in their house? This feels more like an uncanny valley feeling. Like you can tell like that was your sister, but she knew very well that she'd gone to sleep. Years later, in India, her grandma was braiding her sister's hair and says this.
Around my 18th birthday, my family and I took a trip to India. We were visiting my grandma, and one night she decided to oil and braid my hair and my sister's hair. So as my grandma was braiding my sister's hair, she looked over at my mom and she said, Ritu, Sneha's twin would have been a girl. I look at my mom and I say, what twin? And my mom looks at me and says, Swasti, I never told you this, but I miscarried Sneha's twin.
So her mom admits that she miscarried a twin. So the thing she saw crawling downstairs when she was a kid could have been her twin. Or maybe something using its face. I don't know. I've heard this kind of story many times over about kids or people seeing things when they were little, especially things that looked like their family. But nonetheless, this is heartbreaking and horrifying. A sibling reaching out from somewhere that she shouldn't. So the part 2 of this TikTok, she grows up and it happens again. Now she's back home as an adult, fresh from the gym, headphones in, and she sees her sister sneaking around the stairs.
This happened around 5 years ago at my parents' house. So I had just gotten home from the gym and I had my headphones on. As soon as you walk into my house, you see this staircase here. I saw my sister's legs sneaking around this corner of the staircase and I rolled my eyes because I was like,
What is up with them in that
switched
stairs?
our house.
So she saw her twice. Same hair, same outfit. One was real and the other wasn't. She searches the house and gets concerned, so she calls the cops because who the heck is in her house? They said the house was empty, but she can assure you that those legs looked exactly like her sister's. Whatever she saw as a child didn't move on, it just waited. And what's crazy is that it's always around the staircase. So it makes me wonder, was that love from beyond or is it some kind of imitation? Now we head to South Africa, where an entire neighborhood learned fear. This creator is talking about a story of this girl named Kayla who grew up in a small town raised by her grandma. Grandma's friend lost her son and apparently smiled at his funeral.
So Kayla was actually one of 4 siblings. However, she was the only one that was raised by her grandmother. Now, her grandmother had a friend down the street who we'll call Koki. Koki had 2 adult children, but one had passed away, the son. And it was rumored that she did something to him. People believe that she did something to him just because of how she was acting during his funeral. At his burial, she seemed happy.
Years later, apparently the grandma's friend was babysitting a 6-year-old. Sunday night, the parents come home and the child is unalive. The grandma's friend tells the mother she's been gone all weekend. As in,
One sad day, Koki's neighbor had to leave town for the weekend, so she asked Koki if she could watch her kids while she's gone. The little girl was described to be cute and pretty chilled for a 6-year-old, so the series of events that followed would leave everyone absolutely confused and horrified. The weekend went by pretty quickly, and Sunday night the parents came back. They tried preparing the little girl for school on Monday. However, when the mother was doing her hair, the little girl kept complaining about a headache. And naturally, the mother thought that her daughter was just exhausted and probably hungry, so she started making her dinner. So she left her daughter in the TV room, walks to the kitchen to prepare dinner. The minute the mother walked back into the TV room, Her daughter had already passed. She was not moving, not breathing, just not alive. This perfectly healthy little girl. She was perfectly healthy, fine, kicking, like, what happened? So the mother ran outside to ask Koki for help. Koki stares at the mother and told her, "The child had been dead for the entire weekend. How are you seeing it so late?"
That is pure evil. No fear, no shock, just certainty. That is the closest thing to evil you can get. That night, Kayla and her grandmother hears footsteps. Human, but growling. The grandma says that's her warning, referring to the grandma's friend, to stay out of her business. No one ever spoke about that child again. Every story today has someone seeing something that they shouldn't have. The spidery thing, the twin that shouldn't be there, and even a witch. And finally, our fifth and last story, and this one will make you close your blinds. So, in this next story, do you guys remember the chain messages? It was like earlier when phones came out, where if you didn't send this to 10 plus people, you will be cursed or something like that. So, that's what this story is about. Apparently, the creator in third grade got a cheap phone and ignored the chain message curse, which was about a girl who unfortunately fell into a well. Like many of us, we probably would have all ignored the chain text message. But the next night, alone upstairs, she went to grab clothes with the blinds open.
Ever since this instance, because I still like her name gives me chills. But anyway, it was about this girl who she didn't have any friends. She was kind of a loner, and two friends had befriended her or something, and they took her into the woods like to hang out or something. I don't freaking know. But then they pushed her down a well and she died. And then in the story, this it talks about this guy named David or something like that who had read the text message of the story, and he didn't send it to 7 or 10 people, and he like saw her in his room and he died. And I was like, this is stupid. Like, I'm not gonna do that. And then the next night, so the way that my house is set up, there's my room on the complete opposite side of the house upstairs, and then there's like this like movie like family where all of my family gets together and we watch movies and stuff. That's downstairs on the opposite side of the house. And so the next night after I had gotten that text message, me and my family were watching a movie, and my mom was like, "Yana, go upstairs and take a shower because it's getting late and you need to get ready for bed." And like the good girl I am, I made my little way upstairs into my bedroom. So the bedroom of my childhood house faced the street where all the street lamps are. So even at night when I have the blinds open, the light shines into my room so I can kind of see what I'm doing and I can see outside into the street. So in my head, I was just like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna grab my clothes and then not even gonna turn on the lights and just head my way to the bathroom. So I'm grabbing my clothes here in my window. You guys are my window. And so I grab my clothes and I look over, and outside I just see this woman with really dark black hair and her eyes were glowing.
I have tears in my eyes of what she described she saw. The glowing eyes, the no motion, just watching her. And the way she says this woman looked around. Ugh, you guys will see it now.
Looking into my room like this, like she was like looking for something. And then for a good 10 seconds, she was looking around the room, and then she finally sees me and makes eye contact with me. And I was just frozen in fear for like a good 20 seconds.
That was a horrifying story. It's like a modern day ghost story, a digital curse that still finds its way to your window. And that wraps up night 1 of 13 Nights of Fear. So we had a mountain cabin that watches you, a twin that shouldn't exist and kept appearing in the staircase, a neighbor who cursed your village, and a girl with glowing eyes outside your window. Which one will you remember when the lights go out? Comment below, story 1 through 5. Also, if you've ever experienced anything like this, email me. I'd love to hear it, and you might hear it in future videos. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and turn on notifications for night 2. Until next time, stay safe and keep the lights on. Bye!